Okay, so welcome to task 2 of week 1, your next or your other foundational assignment, your next required assignment. You will be responding to 4 questions or prompts, each requiring a paragraph. What I recommend is this in terms of getting this done in a way that is digestible and chunkable. So what I recommend that you do is read page 1 of the assignment document, which you should have already downloaded. So read that first and then come back to the rest of the video here. Just click pause right now and go read that page. All right, so assuming you've read that page, you have a basic idea of what my expectations are with respect to formatting, writing, evaluation, what the purpose and the objective is. As I did state, and as I've stated elsewhere in the course, this is a foundational assignment. We're using it to connect you, your beliefs, your thoughts, your opinions to what it means to think philosophically in the topics that we'll be covering in light of the pandemic. As you will see, the topics all have to do with COVID-19, aka the coronavirus. You will be using your responses at least once to complete future assignments where you apply what you have learned during Unit 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. So at least once. Some of the paragraphs, there will be at least 2 paragraphs that you write that you will use at least twice. And when I say, you'll use them at least once or at least twice, you will be getting a grade for applying what you learned to those paragraphs. You might even use a given response 3 times. And so what we'll be doing is we'll be applying as we go along throughout the semester what you learned in this class to your own original opinions. Now, I have you write down your opinions before we actually start to learn about philosophy in terms of the topics, questions, and themes. Why? Because I want to see where you're at. What is your starting point? What do you originally think before you start to learn the specific lessons in the course? I think your personal opinions are an amazing place to start. And the idea here is that I want you to articulate some thoughts. And by the way, these thoughts might be thoughts that you never even realized that you have. You might be thinking, oh, I never even knew I felt that way until you asked me that question. And so be okay with not being able to answer the questions and the prompts in this assignment right away. They are designed to make you think. The first one is pretty factual. It's a pretty easy prompt. But the last 3 prompts or questions for the paragraphs 2, 3, and 4, they get you to really think deeply and to think carefully about some ideas that are operating somewhere in your meaning-making lens. So just be prepared to have a kind of experience. And it's okay to not know exactly what to think. You have an option where you get to tell me that you're not sure what to think, but even that has specific expectations therein. So what I'm going to recommend then is that next, what I would like for you to do is, if you're ready to write, then proceed with the video. If you're not ready to write, you're not ready to learn more about the assignment, pause it and come back when you are. The way the rest of the video is going to proceed is as follows, and this is the way I suggest you use it. Next, I'm going to go over page 2. Page 2 of the writing assignment covers the first paragraph. I'm going to give you missing expectations and missing details. I'm going to be telling you exactly what you need to do to get to an A-level response and to avoid mistakes that students have made. I'm going to get you inside my mind exactly what I'm thinking about, what I'm looking for. Once you get the instructions for paragraph 1 on page 2, okay, then I recommend that you pause this video and go ahead and write. Now, something that I think it just left my mind that I wanted to say in my mind is, oh yes, I would wait to read page 2 of this assignment document until you follow the video. So let's read page 2 together, and then I'll give you missing details, take notes, and then, write your response. When you're done with that, if you're ready to go ahead and get to page 3, topic 2, then proceed with the video. If not, pause. Maybe your brain's going to need a break after all that, after that writing, and then resume the video when you have time. Just look here to see, look at the time mark to see where you left off at. But that's what I would do. I would read the page along with me with respect to pages 3, 4, and 5, and we're going to chunk it. Get the missing instructions as we read together the instructions, and then write. When you finish a given page, instead of verbal instructions, again, pause the video, decide whether you're ready to continue or if your brain needs a break. If it's a lot for you to do, what I recommend is doing 1 paragraph each day or 2 paragraphs each day. It depends on when you start this. And make sure you do follow the video for the rest of the assignment instructions. Okay, so let's get through page 1 together. So this is paragraph 1, and this is mandatory content. It's mandatory because, I need to make sure that you are writing down stuff that will be usable and that is on point. How did the COVID-19 pandemic first or initially impact you back in March 2020? So that is about the time that the pandemic began to really make the news in the US and more people began to see that it was going to affect them, and cities and states and the United States government started to initiate policies and whatnot and make certain decisions that affected us. And so that's why I'm getting you to think about back in March. If you're a student taking a face-to-face class, chances were you had to then take classes online. In fact, you did. But of course, this might have affected your job. You have children, if they went to daycare. So there are so many ways that this could have affected you directly or indirectly. So feel free to address this question, whether it's directly, indirectly. It can have to do with your work, your schooling, your children, people you're responsible for, your daily life, your social life, even your psychology. Maybe you became more anxious or upset, or maybe you were wondering or puzzled or angered. But the point is to talk about how it impacted you in some way. I definitely would like for you to at least mention 1 or 2 ways it initially maybe changed your life in some way. Everybody was affected because some things were just shut down for everyone. So make sure that you cite at least 1 thing. So for example, no one could go to bars, or no one could do this, at least not in the DFW area. And I'm assuming most of you are in the area. So to what extent are you still living with the effects of the pandemic? So maybe because some restrictions have been lifted, some things are not affecting you as much anymore. So you can talk about that. You can talk about how the initial impact of X is only affecting you a little bit now. So there's some element of a restriction still in play, but not completely. Or you could say maybe that, you're still feeling the full impact of a given thing that you first experienced in March and whatnot. Notice that I want you to write at least 5 sentences. When I give you sentence numbers, it's a minimum requirement. I'm trying to make sure that you think things out at least that much. So I'm not, this is not an accounting class. I'm not interested in just numbers. The reason why the 5 is there is to make sure that you are giving me some kind of minimum. One thing you need to know about any of these paragraphs is that they need to be really detailed, and you want to make sure that you are not contradicting anything you say within a sentence. Some people will start a sentence off with 1 thought, and by the end of the sentence, they've contradicted themselves. Or they'll start a paragraph with a thought, and later in the paragraph, they'll contradict themselves. So also make sure that you're looking out for that. So I'm kind of starting to go over how I grade this stuff. And by the way, you can get a hold of the grading rubric. When you go to task 2C and click on the submission link, you will see a button at the top and you can view the rubric. And I really recommend that you do that so you can see how I grade. Now, here is how, and I did this in the orientation review for the first item, here's how I want you to start the wording of your answers. Again, this is not an English essay. This is not prose. So you're going to see the writing tasks in this class are very different. Okay, in fact, we might do these things in this class that your English teacher told you not to do, that your history teacher told you not to do. We're going to do things differently here. So what I'm going to want you to do is I'm going to want you to incorporate the wording from the questions and the prompts into your responses. So you would say, you could have an opening sentence for your topic that says something like, the COVID-19 pandemic initially impacted me in a number of ways, in a variety of ways. Or there are quite a few things I have to say about how the COVID-19 pandemic first initially impacted me. So do you see how I'm pulling major chunks out of the question stem? Same thing here. You can do a transitional sentence saying, I'm now going to talk about the extent to which COVID-19 impacts are still affecting me. Or you could say, you get the basic idea, but I do want to see that. And why? Because I want to see efficiently when I'm grading, I want to be efficient in seeing and checking, did they cover that topic? Did they cover that topic? Sometimes students are too indirect, or they kind of go at the question sideways, And in this class, you're always going to want to attack the question straight on. You're always going to want to attack a writing prompt straight on, explicitly and obviously. And when you pull from the words and the phrases and question stems and prompts, you show me that you're doing that. You're like, hey, it's like shouting out, hey, I'm dealing with this part of the question. Hey, I'm dealing with this part of the prompt. So what you'll want to do now, what I'm suggesting is that you go ahead and write your paragraph, and that you come back to this video when you're ready to go for the next page, which will be much more involved in terms of the writing. Paragraph 2, mandatory structure and content. Notice that this is a little bit different from page 2 where I just said mandatory content. For the remainder of the paragraphs, you need to follow what is a kind of outline or sequence for each paragraph. Again, I need to iterate that this is not your traditional writing assignment. This is not a traditional English paper or essay of any kind. I want you to think of these as more of kind of technical pieces that you are doing where you're giving a lot of structure in your writing and how you develop ideas. And again, why am I doing that? I need to make sure that whatever you write down, that you can use it to apply what you learn throughout the course. So we have to make sure that you make certain moves. Following the structure and content expectations in writing and that I'm now presenting to you in the video will make what you write down much more usable throughout the semester, and you'll enjoy the course that much more. So let's go ahead and get into the question that I have selected for what is basically going to be Unit 2. Do you think you are making a sacrifice of your own free will? Now, when I say making a sacrifice, I want you to think about a sacrifice that you have made or are making as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So again, I want you to think about a sacrifice that you have made, had made, or are still making in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. And you might think in particular, actually we'll get, you can think about like maybe a sacrifice that you've had to make in response to following a governmental decision or policy, a decision that was made by even Cedar Valley College or, institutions, or maybe your kids' high school or elementary school or daycare, your job, your employer, or whatnot. So you're going to be thinking about that. And you're going to be thinking about whether or not that sacrifice is something that you would consider to be freely made. So notice that you are going to write one coherent paragraph, and it has several mandatory elements. As you can see from my lettering, there are 5 mandatory elements. But there is an alternative if for C, D, and E, let me see, C, D, and E. For D and E, there is an alternative, but A, B, C, everyone will have. I just want to let you know that this is the most involved paragraph. So I'm going to spend longer on this one, and you'll see that there's a lot more written instruction for paragraph 2. Paragraphs 3 and 4 do require deep thinking, but they're not as involved in terms of the technical moves. I promise you will appreciate the structure, the imposed structure, when we get to the respective unit. You're going to say, oh, that's why she laid it out the way that she did. All right, so notice I say that first you will focus in on and describe one personal sacrifice you are making or have made due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Write at least 2 sentences. So as I've told you before, I like you to incorporate wording from the prompts or steps. So you would start off, your very first sentence in the paragraph would start off with is a personal sacrifice I am making, or one personal sacrifice I have made, or a personal sacrifice I would like to focus in on and describe is. So in the last example, I reworded this a little bit to construct a good sentence, but I had all of these words. In the first couple of examples, in terms of starting off your sentence using the wording, the prompt and stem, I used more this part right here. Just make sure that your first sentence incorporates a lot of the wording from this prompt right here, okay? And notice that these prompts right here, these subcomponents, are there to help you address this question as needed for future assignments. Now, elaborate. So you're going to tell me what the sacrifice is, and then a second sentence could tell me what that sacrifice consists of. If you'd like to write more than 2 sentences, you can. 2 sentences is the minimum. Now, describe at least one external cause of that sacrifice. Examples of what I mean by external cause can include things like decisions made by governments, business, and schools. In other words, decisions that were not made by you and that you're not in control of. The natural world and limitations. So that could be stuff like, you can't control whether or not there's a virus, but there's a virus nevertheless. In nature, the natural world runs its own course till human beings get together to use their intelligence to decide how they'll respond to it. Natural limitations can also refer to your own physical limitations. For example, a natural limitation of human beings is that we cannot fly like birds. That's called a natural limitation in philosophy. Physical constraints. So an example of a physical constraint would be like somebody pointing a gun at you or tying you up in a chair, physical forces. So you're going to write at least 2 sentences. When you do, again, incorporate, important words of the prompt into your response. I'm definitely going to be looking for the phrase external cause. So you can say something like, an external cause of my sacrifice is, or I'll now focus on an external cause of this sacrifice, or an external cause that I would like to talk about with respect to my sacrifice. But again, you see how I'm incorporating the words of that prompt into the next part of my paragraph. So then you'll write at least 2 sentences. So one sentence can tell me what the external cause is, and then the second sentence can talk about the external cause. Next, you're going to describe at least one internal cause of the sacrifice. Examples of how I'm using the word and how I want you to use the word internal cause include the following. Your own personal wants, your own desires, your own motivations, your own wishes. I've repeated desires here, just now caught that. Feelings, beliefs. Write at least 2 more sentences. So don't just tell me, my own desires are causing this. You need to tell us what your desires are. Again, for this part, I will be looking to see that you are using the word internal cause to let me know that that's what you're about to talk about at this point of the paragraph. You're also going to tell me which kind of an internal cause. So I should see at least one of these words in parentheses. It should be own or personal want, desire, motivation, wish, desire. But then tell me, what is the belief, or what is the desire? What is the want? So one thing I'll be emphasizing in helping you learn how to write for me in this assignment and future assignments that you write is, I want exactness. I want details. I want precision. Look at the grading rubric for this task, but when it comes to the submission link. Look at what I say about precision. I like you to be exact. Give me details. Elaborate. Next, so now this is going to be a really weird part because I'm actually telling you to copy, but it's not plagiarizing because it's part of the assignment. And again, this is designed to make sure that you set up your response such that it has all the parts that you need to do some analysis on it later. So now I'm actually telling you to copy an entire sentence. So when you turn in your submission, Safe Assign might say that there's possible plagiarism, but that's just look and see what it says you're plagiarizing. And if it says it's this entire sentence, know that I told you to copy the sentence and I'm not going to deduct. Okay, so the sentence is in italics, and you'll be doing this for the other responses as well, copying a sentence. So you will either copy, I do think I am making or have made this personal sacrifice of my own free will, or I do not think I am making or made this personal sacrifice of my own free will. So you need to choose do or do not. I am making or I made according to whatever it is, according to the sacrifice that you have chosen, whether it's in the past and you're no longer making it or whether you're currently making it now. So you'll obviously tweak this a little bit accordingly to what you are focused on. Next, you're going to offer 3 additional sentences in direct support of the claim you copied. So let's say you say, I do think I am making this personal sacrifice of my own free will. When I say, give me 3 additional sentences of support, what I'm getting you to do is to construct an argument. Basically, D is going to function as a kind of judgment or conclusion. You are telling me you do or do not think you have or have made a personal sacrifice over your own free will. Now in part E, you want to persuade me
that what you say is true, okay? You're not persuading me that you really believe it or think it. You're trying to get me to agree, for me to say, you know what? I agree. You are, or I agree. You are not making this personal sacrifice of your own free will. If it helps, think of me as a judge and you're trying to convince me whether or not in fact, I guess you could say I am a judge. I'm going to judge whether or not you were persuasive in trying to convince me that you made some sacrifice of your own free will or not. This is something where some students mess up on. At this point, I get a lot of students that get off in tangents or irrelevant. So you might have very strong emotions or feelings about the pandemic itself and very strong emotions and feelings about the sacrifice, but don't let that deter you and get you off course in terms of what Part E is asking you to do or directing you to do. You have to write sentences that directly support what is stated in D. If you want, you can give definitions of how you're using words that you think are important. If you do use dictionary definitions, make sure you put those definitions in quotation marks and that you fluidly embed them in your paragraph. So you might want to tell me how you're using the word free or free will or will. If you use the word choice or anything like that, or control or whatnot, you can also do that. Just make sure that whatever you say here, you're using the sentences are trying to convince me, your teacher, to persuade me, your teacher, that what you say here is true or at least plausible, that you are or not making a sacrifice of your own free will. Now, maybe you just can't make up your mind, okay? If you cannot make up your mind, you still have to do A, B, and C of your paragraph. But then, instead of doing D and E, you're going to start here. If you cannot make up your mind about the sacrifice being of your own free will, copy the following statement. So again, that means you will not copy the statement in D, you will copy this statement. It is not rational, and this should say for me, so if you could please correct that. It is not rational for me to take a definitive stance on whether I am making or have made the personal sacrifice of my own free will. Make sure that, when you do get to this part, when you copy a statement in any case, that you are still focused on the sacrifice that you mentioned in A, and that you talk about with respect to element B and C. So when I say rational, it's because, as you will learn, philosophers really prize rationality as an epistemic good. Epistemology, as you will learn, is the branch of philosophy that focuses on knowledge. And one thing that is prized by most philosophers is reason, being a rational person. And a philosopher would say that you should not accept a conclusion or make a final judgment when you are not persuaded enough to do so. So you don't just accept a conclusion just because, for example, everybody else thinks what is stated in the conclusion, or because you don't have time to think through the reasoning to get to a definite stand or a definite take on something. It's not rational to do so. It's rational to take a definite stance or draw a conclusion or take a position only when you feel that you have compelling evidence or reasoning to do so. Hence, you may reach the conclusion that, hey, I cannot take a definite stance because I'm in philosophy. I've learned that I should not state a conclusion for or against something unless I feel strongly compelled to do so by reasons and or evidence. Now, that would be your next sentence. So you would write your parts for A, B, C. Instead of doing D and E, you would write this sentence. And then that would be followed up. You still have expectations. You would need to follow that up with at least 4 additional sentences. And you want to select one of these, not both of them, just one or the other. If you cannot make up your mind because you can see both sides, tell me what the 2 sides are and support you can think of for each side. So you could say something like, and feel free to borrow from this as a template, you can say, so you can actually use this part right here. You can say, I cannot make up my mind because I can see 2 sides. I can see 2 different positions. Change the wording maybe a little bit there. And then you can say, on the one side, I can see why my sacrifice is not free. And then you can say, my sacrifice might not be free because. And then you can say, on the other side, or on the other hand, or I can also see that maybe my action or my sacrifice is free because, again, showing me, what kind of support might be offered for that side. All right. And so the idea here is that, the idea with going with this option is that you see a logical, valid argument for both sides, that you are making a sacrifice of your own free will or that you're not. But you also see the side for the conclusion that you're not. Because you see equally compelling reasoning and evidence on both sides of the question, it is not rational for you to just arbitrarily and randomly choose a conclusion. You're suspending judgment, which is a fine move to make in philosophy. Now, it might be that you cannot make up your mind because you need more information. If so, tell me what information you need, what kind, from whom, and why that information is relevant to taking a stand. Again, you'll need 4 sentences if you do this. Do not use both of these. Either you're going to choose this one or this one, but you must choose one. Again, use the wording in the prompt. So you would start off by saying something like, I cannot make up my mind because I need more information, or because I need more information, I cannot make up my mind. Okay, so you can rephrase it, make it a little bit more yours, and then make sure you hit each of the elements in the rest of this prompt very exactly, very specifically, very directly. So you would say something like, one bit of information I need would be from X, or the kind of information that I need would be, this, study, research from this organization, from this institution. And then I need, and keep in mind that, this is going to be at least 3 or 4 sentences. This would be 1 or 2 sentences just right here by itself. This would be maybe 1 or 2 sentences by itself. So then you're going to want to say, this information is relevant to taking a stand because, or this information is absolutely, you could say, is important instead of relevant, so that would be fine, is necessary to taking a definite stand, so you see where I'm coming from. Okay, so keep in mind what you've learned so far about this writing assignment. I've really focused on, making sure that you hit all elements of the paragraph, how this is to be considered more of a technical exercise for future work, so we're not going to be using everything that you learn in English about like how to do a paragraph. This is very structured. You learn how you have to incorporate the wording in the prompts and the question into your responses. You've learned that I like you to be super direct, super obvious, super transparent, super detailed, and really making sure I understand exactly where you're coming from. If you're ready to write, go ahead and pause this video and start writing. And if you're not ready to write, pause the video and come back to it when you are. Paragraph 3, mandatory structure and content. So this video will be a lot shorter because it's a little bit less involved and you now have an idea of how this works. So the question here is, do you think it was morally permissible for your local government to make you shelter in place? So for example, if you live in Mesquite, Garland, or Dallas, these cities, then, and I think others as well, then you were under the Dallas County ordinances when it came to COVID-19 back in March when things were really taking into effect, especially when it came to shelter in place. And as you can see, that is what I have selected. That affected all of us. We were supposed to all shelter in place according to either national, state, or local governance decisions. So what you will do is, again, create one coherent paragraph as follows. There are 2 basic elements, so as you can see, yes, it's a little bit less involved than the other one. You'll begin your response to the question with the following, depending on your position. So again, remember, this is what you think. It's how you think through something that matters in this class. You can think whatever you want, as long as you are thinking about the things that I ask you to or direct you to think about, and as long as you develop your answers in the way that I ask you to. All right. So you will copy this sentence as appropriate. I do or do not think it was morally permissible for my local government to make me shelter in place. So this will be the very first sentence in your paragraph. Another thing that I want to add about, like when I tell you to copy a sentence, it's to make sure that your response is focused and on target for future learning and future application. We've got to make sure that what you have is relevant and that you're focusing on the right things. Now, as you can see in the next part, write at least 4 additional sentences in direct support of the claim that you just copied. So similar to part of the previous topic, you are constructing, in effect, another argument, and you are going to have a soft talk module that defines argument and goes over argument the way that we'll be using the term in this class from a philosophical point of view. But the basic definition of argument is that it's basically a set of statements where at least one statement, a premise, is given in support of another statement, a conclusion. And I'm using statement in a way that is very different from how we use it in everyday life, and you'll get more about that in the soft talk modules. The main thing that I want you to understand is basically In completing these steps the way that I'm asking you to give me an argument. The sentence that you copy here functions as a conclusion, and that is your conclusion. And I want to know in part B, what reasons do you have for thinking that it is morally or not morally permissible, or that it was or was not morally permissible for your local government to make you shelter in place? What reasons lead you to that conclusion? So while you're telling me what your reasoning is for that conclusion, you're also thinking about trying to convince me, your instructor, trying to persuade me, right, that what you're saying in your first sentence is true or at least plausible. So again, you're either trying to persuade me that it was morally permissible for your local government to make you shelter in place, or you're trying to persuade me that it was not. As I said before, make sure that these sentences that are supporting this one are not going, don't go off on a tangent. Don't start talking about things that are contextually related, but not logically directly supporting this, trying to advance this as true or plausible. Make sure that you do not get off track in this section. Everything that I read here should somehow function to try to lead me to accept what you say here. Again, if you want to, you can, one of the sentences or a couple sentences that you can write to directly support your first sentence could be, how do you define morally permissible? What does it mean to say something was moral or immoral? How do you use that? Why do you think, how does your definition for moral or not, immoral, right or wrong, if you will, connect to whether or not it was okay or permissible for your local government to make you shelter in place? All right, now, as with the previous prompt, I give you an option if you are someone who finds that you cannot make up your mind. So you still do part A, but instead of doing part B, if you cannot make up your mind, you skip B and you come down here. Again, you still copy a statement, okay? And actually, I'm realizing you don't do A or B. So if you cannot make up your mind, completely skip. Do not do any of this, okay? If you cannot make up your mind, do not do any of this. Instead, you're going to start here. If you cannot make up your mind with respect to what? This question. If you cannot make up your mind with respect to this question, you're going to skip A and B, and you're going to come down here. Instead, you will start with the following statement. It is not rational for me to take a definite stance on whether it was morally permissible for my local government to make me shelter in place. So I already told you about why we're using the word or phrase not rational for me to take a definite stance. I'm not going to repeat that here. That is in the video for the previous page and topic. What I am going to say, as I did before, is that even if you cannot make up your mind, you still need at least 4 more sentences after you copy a sentence. Similar, just like with the other topic, if you cannot make up your mind, you need to choose from one of 2 pathways in terms of idea development. So either you're going to pick this option or you're going to pick this option. This will be sentence 1, and then you'll have 4 more sentences for this part or this part. So again, you're going to incorporate the wording from the prompt or phrases for these respective bullets, depending on which one you use. So you will say something like, I cannot make up my mind because I can see both sides. Or I can see both sides, therefore I cannot make up my mind. And then you'll tell me, on the one side, I can see blah, and the reason is because blah. On the other hand, I'm really I think that maybe I'm not. It wasn't blah, and the reason why I think this is because blah. Or you can choose this option. You can say, well, I can't make up my mind because I need more information, or because I need more information, I just cannot make up my mind. And then so a sentence or 2 telling me what kind of information, from whom, where do you think you can get the information from? And then another sentence or 2 tell me why is that information so important to you that you can't take a definite stand without it.
Paragraph 4, mandatory structure content. While there are a lot of similarities with the previous 2 topics, I will say something specific about this topic in terms of constructing it. So there are a lot of conflicting claims made about the coronavirus, as I'm sure you're well aware. Some of the conflicting claims have to do with its origins. At one point, people were saying it's from a Chinese farm or market, right? Outdoor market. Other people say, no, it's from a lab, a Chinese lab.
And then other people were like, no, it is from a Chinese lab, but they put it in the open air market so that it can infect other people and spread. And so a lot of people had a disagreement. And then it turned out somebody decided that both people had elements of the truth to create the real truth. Of course, we've heard some Americans say that it was inflicted on purpose by the Chinese in a lab. And of course, I have actually heard the rumor that the Chinese say that America purposely gave it to the Chinese by spreading it among their soldiers or something like that. So not only do you have conflicting beliefs about the coronavirus and its origins within the United States or within China itself, but you have it across countries. So not only do we have conflicting beliefs about the coronavirus within the United States, but across countries. We have conflicting beliefs about just how dangerous it is. We see conflicting beliefs or claims being made about how it is spread, what can stop the spread, if anything. We see conflicting beliefs about the past, current, and predicted rate of infection. You can Google this stuff, and especially social media, and you'll find that there are so many different claims being made about these elements of the coronavirus. And not only that, but people who are making these claims are often, some of them present arguments, they present rational, evidence or reasoning in support of their conclusions about the coronavirus along these dimensions. But it's also very strong. The positions are often strongly reflected along with emotions as well. People feel very strongly about the beliefs that they have about the coronavirus and the elements herein listed. So it's really interesting to think about that, and we're definitely going to get more into that during Unit 4. The question that I have for you to focus your thinking in your writing for your last topic is, given that there are so many conflicting beliefs about these things, do you think it's possible to be 100% certain that any of the claims in the debate about the virus are true? If so, then how so? If not, why not? So make sure you keep in mind the context of the question. What I want you to focus on in answering this question is what I just talked about here in the video verbally with respect to what is written here, okay? So notice that here I say conflicting claims, and here I say conflicting beliefs. When we make a claim about something like the virus came from an open market in Wuhan, China, that is a statement according to philosophers, and you'll learn more about how we define statement during a soft talk module. But that's a statement that makes a claim. And when you have a statement that makes a claim, you're reflecting a belief. The belief can be from an individual, an organization, an institution. The belief that is being expressed in a statement in the form of a claim can be from a preacher, teacher, professor, scientist, political person, government officials, your neighbor, a kid, anybody. Now notice a really important set of terms here. 100% certain. When we're saying, is it possible? And notice, I'm just saying it's possible. I'm not saying that anyone is currently 100% certain. I'm saying, is it possible? So make sure you keep this part in line right here, in mind in here, okay? The question is not, do you currently, or does anyone currently have 100% certainty about any of the claims? No, I'm asking you, is it possible to be 100% certain? Now, and that's a possible, very important term here. 100% certain means there's zero doubt. There's that you think you have found some belief expressed in some statement in a claim that you have that it's possible to have zero doubt about it. So in epistemology, a branch of philosophy that we're going to be studying, when philosophers talk about being 100% certain of belief, they're saying that it cannot be doubted. So being certain about something in philosophy is incompatible with doubting it. If you are certain about a belief, then you do not doubt it. If you doubt a belief, even just a little bit, even if you just doubt a belief 1%, that means you're not certain about it. So make sure you're keeping that phrase in mind right there and what it means. About any of the claims in the debate about the virus are true. So notice that I have claims, right? Because I said that beliefs get expressed as statements in the form of claims. And then I say are true. So I didn't say that you think it's possible to be 100% certain that all of the claims are true. When I say any, I'm basically, do you think that there's at least one or some claims that we can be 100% certain are true? If so, how so? If not, why not? Okay, so let me shed a little bit more light in terms of in terms of what I'm asking you to do with this specific topic. So the setup structure is the same, the moves you make. You're going to give me a conclusion, and then you're going to support that conclusion with other sentences, other claims, other beliefs that directly support your first sentence. Same kind of thing. But again, I'm going to go over a little bit more the topic itself. So you're going to begin your response with the following: if you can take a definite stand depending on your position. I do or do not think it is possible to be 100% certain that some or any of the claims about the coronavirus are true. So make sure that you tweak the do or do not think and the some or the any part of this to line up with what you intend to defend. As with the other responses, make sure that the sentences that come after your first copied sentence do not contradict the first sentence. The other sentence beyond those, the copied one, those are supposed to support the first statement, right? So if they're supposed to support, they should not contradict. They should be relevant in trying to convince me of something. So some of you may choose a phrase, I do think it is possible to be 100% certain that some of the claims about the coronavirus are true. And since they're conflicting, you would not say all, because if two beliefs are, you can't say that two conflicting beliefs about the virus are true from the standpoint of epistemology or philosophy. So, and we'll get into the why of that later, but I don't want you to say that. I don't want you to make the claim that I do think it's possible to be 100% certain that all of the claims are true. Because in philosophy, you cannot both say that you can't say that. Let me give you an example. Let's say you say the coronavirus was started by the Chinese. That's a belief. The coronavirus was started by the Americans. Okay, and in other words, as the origin. Okay, so let's tweak the sentence. The original creator of the coronavirus is the Chinese. That's one belief. Another belief is the original creator of the coronavirus is the Americans. That's the other belief. From a rational standpoint, from the standpoint of philosophy, those two claims about the original creator of the virus cannot both be true at the same time. And therefore, you wouldn't say that. So keep in mind the context of this question. I am saying that there are conflicting beliefs about all of these. So you can't say all of the conflicting beliefs are true, because if one belief is true, then that has to mean the other is false. So if China is the original creator of the coronavirus, then that, by entailment, implies that it is false that the United States is the original creator of the coronavirus. So my main thing here is to explain why you cannot formulate a statement for the first part of your paragraph that says, I think it's possible to be 100% certain that all of the claims about the coronavirus are true. That's not rational from the standpoint of philosophy, given that many claims conflict or cancel another or each other out, or at least they seem to. So if you do think it's possible to be 100% certain that at least some of the claims of the coronavirus are true, make sure you use the word some and not all. You would not use any. So if you do think it's possible, do not use the word any, you're going to use the word some. If you say, I do not think it's possible to be 100% certain, I want you to focus on any. So here it is more absolute. Do you think that there's no way it is possible to establish which among the conflicting, competing, opposing beliefs are true? Like there's none of them. You don't think it's possible? Then that's what you will say. You will say, I do not think it is possible to be 100% certain that any of the claims about the coronavirus are true. So I really want you to focus on one or the other if you're going to take a definite stand. So when we say some, is there at least one belief or set of claims that we can be, or kind of claim, or at least one claim that we can be certain is true? Then you're going to pick this, whether it's 1 or 100 claims you think it's possible, or any if you don't think. In other words, no claims. We can be 100% certain. We cannot be 100% certain that any claims about the coronavirus are true. And so again, by any, that means none of the claims. Now, that is the conclusion. That is the sentence that you will support with the 4 additional sentences. Again, I'm not in love with numbers themselves. What I want you to do is reason things out that much. When you look at the grading rubric, you will see that I have most points, I think, assigned to sufficiency. And sufficiency is really important, and I've been covering it in a kind of indirect way, or I've been using it actually directly, the concept of sufficiency, but I haven't named it as such. So that's when you reason things out enough. So I want at least 4 sentences of reasoning. I'm trying to get you to reason things out enough as you try to persuade me with these sentences to believe what you believe, to think what you think. And so the main part of your claim would really start with, it is possible or it is not possible. So that's the main idea, that it is, you can be certain or not certain. So remember, do not go off on a tangent here. What some students, I've seen some students do when it comes to this kind of a question or prompt is they'll start getting into the political, social, cultural elements of the debate, the context of the argument that I want, but then they get off track. You want to make sure that if you are going to mention any of those elements, that it is directly supporting what is in the conclusion. Here you should have something to say about certainty, 100% certainty and claims. Here in these sentences, I should see the word true being used explicitly. So I'm saying I will be looking for the words 100% certain and true somewhere in your reasoning here. You need to directly, obviously, make use of terms in your conclusion. Anything that is in your premises in this part, I'm going to be saying, how is that supposed to connect to their conclusion? And really, I shouldn't even have to ask. You should be so clear and detailed in your thinking and how you link one statement to another that it's very easy and obvious for me to see what this has to do with this. So if I am going to see that linkage, you obviously need to talk about certainty and truth here in supporting what you say here. Now, as with the previous responses, you have the option to say that you cannot make up your mind. So if that's you, then you're going to skip for this topic, skip A and B, and go directly to here. If you cannot make up your mind, copy the following statement. It is not rational for me to take a definite position on, just like the other prompt. And then this is similar, so I'm not going to repeat this. I've told you how to deal with these with respect to pages, I believe it was 2 and 3, topics 2 and 3. No, I want to say it was pages 3 and 4, topics 2 and 3. I've already walked you through these elements of choosing this option. So if for some reason you're skipping around in the video and you want to know how you use this relative to this statement, this option, then go back into the video where I cover topics 2 and 3 on pages 3 and 4, and you'll see how you do this part for a given topic.